Have you ever wondered why love, the most beautiful of emotions, can also summon the deepest storms within the human soul? Why the very thing that brings us warmth also tests our strength, our patience, and our sense of self? Love, to the unguarded mind, is a battlefield where desire fights against reason. But to the Stoic, it is a mirror, a sacred reflection of what lies within, not what is taken from without. In a world where people chase affection as though it were oxygen, few stop to ask the one question that could save them from years of silent suffering. What if love was never meant to complete you, but to reveal you? The Stoics saw emotion not as an enemy, but as a messenger. Seneca once wrote that to be ruled by passion is to serve two masters, pleasure and pain. Both are fleeting, and both can enslave. The wise man or woman learns to stand at the center of their own being, unmoved by the chaos of others. For it is not love itself that wounds us, but our dependence upon it. Consider the woman who gives endlessly, believing that her sacrifice will anchor a drifting heart, or the man who fears silence, mistaking distance for rejection. Their suffering does not come from love, but from attachment, an unconscious belief that another person's approval defines their worth. This is the great illusion that the Stoic seeks to dismantle. For no one who truly knows themselves ever begs to be seen. Love, through the Stoic lens, is not possession. It is participation. It is the choice to share one's peace without demanding it in return. The Stoic lover does not say, "I need you to make me happy." They say, "I choose to walk beside you, but I remain whole without you." This does not make them cold, it makes them free. Modern psychology calls it secure attachment. Stoicism called it apatheia, the state of inner calm where emotion no longer distorts perception. In this serenity, love is no longer a storm that tosses the soul. It becomes a wind that moves it forward with purpose and grace. Imagine a relationship where silence does not breed anxiety, where absence is not interpreted as abandonment. A connection where both remain sovereign, yet intertwined, not through control, but through understanding. This is the harmony Stoics sought, the sacred balance between passion and peace. You see, love becomes dangerous only when it becomes a mirror for our wounds. Every obsession, every jealousy, every fear of loss, these are not signs of devotion, but of disconnection from the self. The Stoic learns to pause in those moments, to ask not, "Why is this person hurting me?" but "What part of me is still fragile enough to be hurt?" For what disturbs you, said Marcus Aurelius, is not the thing itself, but your judgment of it. When a lover withdraws, the untrained mind panics. It projects abandonment, unworthiness, failure. But the Stoic pauses. They observe. They ask, "What is within my control right now?" They breathe. They stay rooted. And in that space between impulse and response, peace begins. Because serenity in love is not about eliminating emotion. It's about mastering the response to it. To feel without drowning. To give without losing oneself. To hold someone close without gripping them too tightly. You might think this detachment makes love less intense, but the truth is the opposite. When you remove fear, love becomes pure. When you stop grasping for permanence, every shared moment becomes infinite. This kind of love does not burn. It glows. It does not demand. It offers. It does not conquer. It liberates. And so, the Stoic does not ask, "How can I make them stay?" but rather, "Can I love them well, even if they leave?" Because love that depends on outcome is not love. It's transaction. Only when you release the outcome can you truly meet another soul without fear. The modern heart often confuses attachment for affection, drama for depth, chaos for chemistry. But beneath the noise, serenity waits, a love untouched by ego, nourished by truth. The Stoic lover walks through this world with quiet strength, knowing that all things, even love, are borrowed. That joy and sorrow come from the same well, and that to drink deeply from either is to live fully without clinging to what must one day pass. So perhaps serenity in love is not found in possession or passion, but in acceptance, the still point where you love what is, not what should be. Love tests the fortress of the mind more than any battle of the body. It strips away illusions, revealing the trembling child beneath our armor. Every disappointment, every silence, every unreturned glance, it all becomes a lesson written in the quiet ink of the soul. To those who seek serenity, these moments are not curses. They are teachers, disguised as heartbreak. The Stoic understands that suffering begins the moment we demand the world to conform to our will. In love, this demand appears subtly, the wish for another to stay, to feel as deeply, to heal our wounds without even knowing they exist. But no person can be molded into salvation. The Stoics taught that virtue lies not in controlling another, but in mastering one's own mind. Love, then, becomes the highest arena of discipline. When a partner withdraws, the unexamined heart seeks reassurance. Why did they change? Did I do something wrong? But the Stoic asks instead, what expectation have I clung to that reality refuses to honor? This shift is liberation. It reclaims energy once wasted on resistance and turns it into insight. In the Stoic tradition, every external event is neutral. Only perception gives it weight. Modern psychology echoes this through cognitive reframing, the art of seeing through emotions' distortion. The Stoic does not numb feeling. They refine it. They hold sorrow in their hands. Examine it and ask, what truth are you hiding from me? Picture a man betrayed by love. His pride urges him to harden, to curse the one who wounded him. Yet the Stoic path asks him to stand before that pain, like a mirror, and see not loss, but lesson. For betrayal only wounds the unguarded ego, never the grounded soul. What is taken from you cannot harm you if it was never yours to own. Likewise, imagine a woman waiting for a message that never comes. Each hour stretches her patience into despair. Her mind conjures stories, none kind. Yet the Stoic whispers, what if this silence is not punishment, but purification? What if it exists to return you to yourself? Love's silence becomes sacred when it teaches the art of inner conversation. Epictetus said, when someone irritates you, realize that it is your judgment which irritates you. In love, this means every disappointment points back to unmet expectations within. Serenity is not found by changing others, but by dissolving those expectations into acceptance. There is immense strength in loving without dependency. It allows both souls to breathe, to meet not as halves completing each other, but as wholes enriching one another. The modern world teaches that love must be intense to be real, yet intensity often disguises insecurity. True connection moves with quiet depth, not noise. The Stoic lover therefore practices presence without possession. They give freely, knowing that generosity is its own reward. They listen without the need to be understood. They remain calm even in misunderstanding, for they know that every argument fades, but dignity endures. To love stoically is to build within yourself a sanctuary no heartbreak can breach, not a wall, but a temple, open, yet protected by pillars of wisdom. When anger rises, you let it pass like a storm that waters the garden but does not uproot the tree. When longing aches, you breathe through it, remembering that the soul's hunger is never for another person, but for wholeness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In relationships, this becomes the quiet revolution that ends cycles of need. For when one learns to sit in solitude without fear, love transforms from addiction into art. And so, serenity in love is not the absence of passion. It is passion without panic. It is fire contained in form, devotion balanced with detachment. It is the smile that remains after rejection, the grace that lingers after goodbye. Because love's highest purpose is not to give you someone to hold, but to teach you how to hold yourself. When two people meet, something ancient stirs, a longing not merely for touch, but for recognition. Beneath every attraction lies a deeper search, the yearning to see ourselves reflected, whole and unafraid, in another soul's gaze. Yet this reflection is never perfect. It trembles, distorts, reveals our shadows, and it is in those shadows that love becomes both a blessing and a trial. The Stoics knew that no mirror made of flesh could fully reveal the divine within us. Others can awaken us, yes, but only briefly. The rest is our task, to polish the inner mirror until it reflects truth rather than desire. For the one who depends on another's eyes to see themselves will forever live in blindness. In the language of psychology, this is projection, the act of casting our unseen parts onto those we love. The man who fears abandonment clings. The woman who fears rejection withdraws. They circle each other, unaware that the dance they perform is choreographed by wounds from long ago. The Stoic does not condemn this pattern. They observe it, as a physician studies a fever, not to judge, but to heal. Love, to the Stoic, is not a surrender to chaos, but an invitation to order. It asks, can you stay centered even when your heart trembles? Can you remain kind, even when you are not understood? These questions are not tests from another. They are initiations into the deeper sanctum of the self. When love stirs pain, the untrained spirit seeks escape. The Stoic, however, remains. They sit with the discomfort, neither suppressing it nor indulging it. They breathe through the ache until it reveals its true name, attachment. For behind every fear of loss lies the illusion of ownership. Nothing in this world truly belongs to us. Not the body, not the past, not even love. We are but travelers, sharing brief moments beneath the same sky. To expect permanence is to fight the law of nature itself. Epictetus would remind us that all things come and go in accordance with the logos, the universal reason. To resist this is to suffer twice, once from the loss and once from the refusal to accept it. And yet, detachment does not mean indifference. It is not the absence of emotion, but its purification. A Stoic heart feels deeply, but clings to nothing. It can love with great tenderness because it no longer fears the ending. It understands that love's beauty lies precisely in its fragility, the way dawn disappears into day, yet leaves light behind. In this understanding, forgiveness blooms. The person who wronged you was only acting from their own blindness, their own confusion. To hold anger is to chain yourself to their ignorance. The Stoic releases not for the other's peace, but for their own. For resentment, like acid, corrodes the vessel that holds it. True serenity in love is forged through trials. Every disappointment is an invitation to return to the present, Every heartbreak whispers, "You are stronger than your longing." The soul learns little by little that love's purpose is not to keep, but to cleanse. And in time, a shift occurs. You no longer crave validation. You no longer chase closure. You see clearly that every person who enters your life is a messenger of growth, carrying a fragment of wisdom wrapped in joy or pain. The Stoic stands in this realization as one stands before a calm sea at twilight. The waves still move, but they no longer frighten. Each one reflects the sky, beautiful, transient, and free. So love, yes, but love wisely. Let your affection be an offering, not a bargain. Let your presence bring peace, not pressure. Let your silence be full, not empty. For when you cease to demand from love, it ceases to wound you. It becomes what it was always meant to be, a reflection of divine order, a practice of virtue, a dance between souls who remember that they are whole. The heart that has faced its own storms no longer trembles at the thunder of another's moods. It knows that every surge of emotion, every jealousy, every yearning, every ache of unfulfilled desire is not a flaw to be erased, but a fire to be refined. The Stoic learns to walk through that fire without burning, to let passion purify rather than consume. In the stillness after loss, something sacred emerges: perspective. When love departs, the untrained soul cries, "I have been abandoned." But the awakened one sees, "I have been returned to myself." The difference between despair and serenity lies only in interpretation. Marcus Aurelius would call it the discipline of perception, the ability to look at what happens not as tragedy, but as transformation. To love as a Stoic is to love with your eyes open. It means standing in the presence of another's beauty without seeking to possess it, admiring their freedom even when it leads them away. It means holding affection lightly, like a bird perched on your hand. If it chooses to fly, you do not tighten your grip, for that would break its wings. You simply open your palm to the sky and whisper, "Thank you for landing here." In the language of modern psychology, this is emotional regulation, the art of feeling deeply while remaining grounded. It is not suppression, it is mastery. Emotions are not enemies, they are messengers asking to be understood. Anger says, "Your boundaries were crossed." Sadness says, "You've lost something meaningful." Fear says, "You're stepping into the unknown." The Stoic listens, nods, and acts, not from impulse, but from reasoned grace. Many confuse serenity with apathy, but apathy is emptiness, while serenity is fullness contained. It is the ocean that remains calm, not because there are no storms, but because its depth absorbs them. The Stoic does not harden the heart, they deepen it. Love, for them, is not a fever to survive, but a rhythm to harmonize with. Consider the modern lover, bombarded by messages that love must be constant intensity, proof, performance, possession. They chase the high of emotional validation, mistaking volatility for passion. But what burns too hot cannot endure. The Stoic seeks the warmth of endurance, the quiet fire that lights the way, rather than blinds the eyes. True connection, in its purest form, is not built on need, but on respect, for the other's soul, for fate, and for impermanence itself. To love wisely is to accept that all meetings are temporary, that even the deepest bond must one day return to silence. Yet this awareness does not make love weaker, it makes it sacred. Because when you know something will not last forever, you begin to cherish it differently, not as a possession, but as a miracle. There is power in the moment you stop resisting the flow of life. When you release the fantasy of control, love begins to flow through you rather than from you. You no longer seek to own, you seek to honor. You no longer ask, will this last? But rather, can I meet this moment with grace? The Stoic way is not to run from love's uncertainty, but to dwell in it with courage. To look at another soul and say, you are free to go, yet I still choose to love you. That is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. For it requires the surrender of ego, the dissolution of demand, and the acceptance of life as it unfolds. And when love inevitably shifts, when passion cools, when affection fades, when two paths diverge, the Stoic bows to the lesson. They do not curse the ending, for endings are only the universe's way of creating space for renewal. Serenity in love, therefore, is not achieved through control, but through communion, with oneself, with nature, with the rhythm of impermanence that governs all things. To live and love in harmony with this truth is to taste the freedom that sages spoke of, the quiet joy that does not depend on circumstance. Because in the end, love is not about possession or permanence. It is about presence, the kind that exists beyond fear, beyond longing, beyond time. The calm that follows understanding is unlike any other peace. It is not the quiet born of avoidance, but the silence that comes after one has truly faced themselves. The Stoic learns that love's ultimate purpose is not to fulfill the ego, but to refine it, to temper the restless mind until it becomes still enough to reflect truth. There comes a moment in every deep connection when illusion fades, the fantasy dissolves, and the person before you stands in their full humanity, flawed, unpredictable, beautifully real. Most people panic at this unveiling. They cling to the fantasy because it feels safer than truth. But the Stoic welcomes the unveiling. They know that only what is real can be truly loved. To love through illusion is to love a shadow. To love through awareness is to love the soul. This awareness transforms relationships. Where once there was the need to be understood, there now exists the grace to listen. Where once there was fear of loss, there now blooms gratitude for presence. For the Stoic, every encounter becomes a meditation on impermanence, an exercise in cherishing what is while it still is. Modern psychology calls this mindfulness, the art of living fully in the present. The Stoic called it virtue, acting in harmony with nature, and nature, in all its wisdom, teaches the same truth again and again. Everything changes, everything returns, everything renews. When love matures under this awareness, it becomes steady like the moon, gentle, constant, reflecting light even in darkness. It no longer burns to consume, but glows to illuminate. It asks not for promises, but for presence. It is not afraid of solitude, for it knows that solitude is simply communion with the self. You begin to see that peace in love does not come from avoiding conflict, but from dissolving the need to win. That silence between arguments is not distance. It is space for reflection. That sometimes the most loving act is not to speak, but to understand. In this serenity, the Stoic finds joy not in being desired, but in being aligned with truth, with virtue, with the quiet rhythm of the universe. They no longer measure love by attention or affection, but by the stillness it brings. The question is no longer, do they love me? But, does this love make me freer, wiser, calmer? Freedom becomes the ultimate form of devotion. To let another be as they are, without molding them to one's image, is to honor their divine autonomy. It is to recognize that love cannot grow where control resides. And so, When love fades or transforms, the Stoic does not chase. They bow. They grieve without despair, for grief is only love with nowhere left to go. They allow themselves to feel its ache, to let it move through the heart like a river finding the sea. For in that movement lies renewal. Seneca wrote, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man." In love, this means the one who fears endings will never love fully. To love without fear is to accept that every embrace may be the last, and to give everything anyway. That is courage. That is serenity. The Stoics' serenity in love, therefore, is not coldness. It is composure born from clarity. It is knowing that affection does not bind you, and loss does not break you. It is learning to stand before the universe with an open heart and say, "Take what you must and leave what you will. I will remain whole." Because the one who has mastered the art of serenity has discovered the secret. Love, like life, is not meant to be owned. It is meant to be experienced. And in that realization, you are free.